Hi, I'm Jack from GatelyAcademy. So let's take a look at what could happen if you fail to disclose something or in some other way you deceive your customer, your client, your principal. Or any member of the public for that matter. Really, sanctions and enforcement are what we want to talk about. There are two things that you most certainly want to be aware of for the exam and for real life. Number one would be Chapter 93A of the Massachusetts General Laws. And number two would be the Board of Registration. Let's take the Board of Registration first. So, as we spoke about in one of the other videos, the Board of Registration can suspend your license, they can revoke your license, they can issue a fine, they can issue you a requirement to pay back the consumer. So let's not forget about the good old Board of Registration. They govern your license, they issue your license. Remember, your license is a privilege, and they can investigate your conduct as a result of a consumer complaint or as a result of their own initiative. So that we've covered in one of the other videos. Let's take a deeper look at Chapter 93A. So Chapter 93A of the Massachusetts General Laws protects the consumer from unfair and deceptive business practices. There's a long list of what those could be. I've come up here with probably the top three for you to kind of consider so you can kind of wrap your mind around Chapter 93A. So the first one is the failure to disclose, which is actually what we talked about in just our previous video to this. If you know the basement floods, but you don't say anything, that's a misrepresentation. That's the failure to disclose, and you could be subject to a lawsuit from Chapter 93A. If you mislead, so, this failure to disclose and misleading is slightly different, but if you mislead someone, remember you must always be honest and accurate, regardless of your working relationship with the consumer. And if you bait and switch, and I kind of think of that most particularly with apartments. If you show somebody one apartment and then you have them fill out paperwork and then they get a different apartment, that's a no-no, of course, as well as something like, saying to somebody, there's no realtor fee or no rental fee, and then at the end you try to tack on a realtor fee, rental fee. Yeah, that is also a no-no of the highest order, so please keep that in mind. A couple of other things that you want to keep in mind. It allows for triple penalty. So clearly, if the courts decide that there's a $10,000 judgment on any particular case, they can multiply that by up to 3 times. Not always 3 times, but up to 3 times. So that's a really big deterrent. Actually sounds like a really good test question, to make sure that so-called, being unfair and being deceptive does not pay. So the crime does not pay. So there's some punitive aspect to Chapter 93A as well. This is also a good time to remember that your agency could be vicariously liable. In other words, everything that you do, you really do on behalf of your agency, under the authority granted to you from your agency. That's why your agency is going to have error and omissions insurance, and that's going to be required of every agency that they have error and omissions insurance. And you might want to check, just last point here, you yourself, I don't want to say you don't need it, but I would definitely say it would be uncommon. It would be rare even for an individual to have their own errors and omissions insurance. Usually you're covered by your agency's policy, but you might want to also check as part of your interview process to see if you have to contribute to the error and omissions policy. And there's some might be every month you put in like $10 or maybe on a transaction by transaction process. Just double check that, because they might actually want you to contribute to that policy in some way or another. So here's Chapter 93A. It's really easy. Don't be unfair. Don't be deceptive. Be honest, be accurate, and disclose any known material defects, regardless of your working relationship with the consumer.